What can you achieve in 30 years? For entrepreneurs, it is enough time to build an influential business. But can you imagine 4 innocent young people sentenced to death or life imprisonment, spending years behind bars, all because of an evil lie and the protection of the government machine? Today, I'm going to talk about a wrongful conviction case that lasted for 30 years. In the 1960s, the United States experienced a wave of anti-organized crime efforts. At that time, organized crime was rampant in the New England area, and FBI Director Hoover vowed to eradicate all the mafia. Ironically, detectives from all over felt too much pressure and found ways to recruit mafia members as informants to improve their clearance rates. In order to build relationships with these informants, these detectives often did dirty things under the table, and many tragedies occurred as a result. One of the informants was named Barbosa, nicknamed the Animal, who specialized in loan sharking and was a ruthless enforcer involved in more than 30 murders. In March 1965, Barbosa and his mafia brothers, including Flemmi and some small-time thugs, gunned down a rival mafia member named Deegan in an alley. The FBI received a tip-off and roughly knew the killer's identities, but did nothing because Detective Rico knew the killer was his long-term informant, Barbosa. For heartless Rico, the clearance rate was always the top priority, and building relationships with valuable informants was the most important thing. Right and wrong were of no concern. He went to great lengths to protect the bloody-handed Barbosa and Flemmi, even deceiving prosecutors with the help of his colleagues and superiors, intending to quickly close the case. Rico and Barbosa fabricated the evidence and implicated 6 people, even though only 2 were involved in the actual crime. The other 4 were innocent patsies picked by Barbosa from his debtor list. In July 1968, a 73-year-old experienced judge and jury were completely unaware of the black box operation and believed the false testimony of the FBI and Barbosa. They handed down the harshest sentences: death and life imprisonment without parole. Lives of the 4 victims were inexplicably ruined. Smart readers might ask, weren't they entirely innocent? Why did they get involved with the likes of Barbosa? Also, did the judge and jury have no judgment? What evidence convinced them to impose such heavy sentences on all the suspects? Don't underestimate the power of fate. Real-life events are often more absurd than fiction. Let's first understand the background of one of the victims. His name is Salvati, a young man who loves his wife and kids. He entered society after graduating from high school and works diligently for over 10 hours every day. Since he doesn't have any specialized skills, he has to work 3 jobs to support his family. Life is tough, but he still tries his best to provide the best for his family, taking them to a pizza restaurant every week and going out for activities and movies. While their lifestyle of earning as much as they spend is manageable, sudden significant expenses can be challenging for Salvati and his wife. Like their neighbors, they occasionally turn to underground loan sharks to get by, but they repay as quickly as possible. One day, the loan shark boss told Salvati that his debt was taken over by the gangsters and he must pay back $400 immediately. Salvati doesn't make much, so how can he come up with that kind of money all at once? 2 thugs came to his house every day to collect the debt, making his life miserable. Salvati couldn't take it anymore and snatched the baseball bat from one of them during a fight, scaring them off temporarily. However, a few days later, a lawyer threatened him, saying, "How dare you offend Mr. Barbosa? He will take good care of you until you can't stand it." Thus, the fate of Salvati and his family became entangled with Barbosa. At that time, there were frequent gangster fights in the suburbs of Boston, and a mobster named Deegan was killed in the brawl. 2 years later, while Salvati was helping a friend move, a police officer walked up to him and said, "I have a warrant for your arrest. You are suspected of killing Deegan." Salvati was confused and asked the officer, "Who is Deegan?" Before he could get an answer, he was taken away. Salvati's wife, Marie, took their children for a walk and heard the news that her husband was arrested within a few minutes. She immediately went to the police station to find out what was going on. Salvati, who was optimistic, comforted his wife, saying that they would be able to go home as long as they explained everything to the police. However, the couple didn't expect to be detained and sentenced for 10 months. During that tough time, everyone was busy. Marie went around trying to figure out how to save her husband, and her friends organized fundraising events to raise tens of thousands of dollars for legal fees. The rookie lawyer kept asking for an alibi from Salvati, which was very difficult for him because he believed he was innocent and didn't need an alibi. Besides, he didn't even know the victim and couldn't remember anything from the day of the murder years ago. Salvati told the court that Barbosa had threatened him before, which was why he was falsely accused. But words were not enough. Barbosa had an FBI informant as a witness, with damning evidence against the suspects. Detective Rico colluded with Barbosa to create a seamless crime scenario, leaving the 4 young people who were falsely accused with nothing but shouting their innocence without evidence. The judge and jury thought it was impossible for an ordinary person to have connections with the mafia. The prosecutor, who had been deceived by the FBI, criticized the mafia severely. The judge and jury naturally believed that all 6 suspects were in cahoots and could not be forgiven. Salvati was only 35 years old and had 4 young children when he was sent to prison. They had no idea that the nightmare would last for 30 long years. The Walpole prison where Salvati was held was a maximum security prison with a dangerous environment, and the prisoners often went hungry and cold and were even beaten by guards and other inmates. The small cell could only fit a bed, a sink, and a toilet. Salvati often hid in the corner, avoiding the violence outside, crying and thinking of his beloved wife and children. Marie was a very strong woman, and she and her husband agreed that he would focus on serving his sentence, and she would do her best to take care of the family. Marie found a job at a center that specialized in low-income children's issues, but the income was meager. Fortunately, her boss understood her difficult situation and would allow her to bring some donated items home for her children during Christmas. Marie worked hard and finally became the director of the center after a few years, and her quality of life improved a little bit. To support her husband as much as possible, Marie braved the wind and rain every weekend and took their 4 children to the distant Walpole prison to visit Salvati. One time, their 8-year-old daughter asked her dad, "What is an electric chair? Are you going to sit on it? My classmates all say you will." Salvati trembled and assured his daughter that he would never sit on an electric chair and would return home safely. After returning to his cell, Salvati cried for a week. It turned out that the children were worried every day and under so much pressure. 10 years later, a lawyer named Garo heard about the case and felt that the entire justice system was unfair. He decided to try to help Salvati. When he met Salvati, he was blunt and said, "Don't tell me you're innocent. I just want to hear the truth." Garo couldn't believe what he heard. During their 3-hour conversation, Barbosa was the only witness in court, and the evidence presented by the prosecution was full of loopholes and incredible. Garo also learned that Salvati's family was struggling financially, so he decided to help him for free. However, Garo's friends thought he was crazy. The lawsuit was essentially against the entire federal government, FBI, Justice Department, and prosecutor. He knew it was almost an impossible task, but he was sure that seeking justice was the only way. Clearing a wrongful conviction is indeed a thankless job. It took Garo nearly 4 years just to collect a large amount of true and false information and to compare and screen it. In the end, what cleared up the case was a police report shortly after the incident. An informant with ties to the underworld identified that, on the night of the murder, Barbosa and Flemmi planned the murder in a restaurant and left together. The report did not mention Salvati at all. Later, the FBI intervened, and Salvati and the other 3 victims suddenly emerged. It is evident that FBI agents protected Barbosa, who was covered in blood, and preferred to protect each other rather than destroy the lives of 4 innocent people. In 1997, Garo finally helped Salvati get parole and walked him out of the prison gate. The 35-year-old energetic young man has now become a white-haired great-grandfather. Salvati looked at his wife and grandchildren in front of him, feeling like he was dreaming, with a blank mind, and unable to believe that he had been absent from their lives for a full 30 years. He missed so much. It took another 4 years for Salvati to be declared innocent and released. This exoneration came too late. The special task force that was formed to investigate this case revealed that the FBI had long been using informants from the mafia, leading to many innocent people being falsely accused. 3 victims who were imprisoned alongside Salvati were affected as well. One of them served an extra 3 years, while the other 2 died in jail. The evil Barbosa was killed by his peers in 1976, but the shameless FBI agent Rico never faced any consequences or apologized to the victims. Therefore, the families of these victims came together and bravely sued the government. After 10 years of release, Salvati still frequently sheds tears. He thinks of his parents who had worried and suffered for him for many years. When he was released, his father had already passed away, and his mother, who suffered from dementia, no longer recognized him. Salvati also thinks of his hardworking wife and lonely children. For 30 years, he had no chance to attend his children's birthday parties, graduations, or weddings. When his wife and children were injured and needed him the most, he was powerless in a distant prison. The merciless national machine had stolen the golden years of his life. In 2007, Judge Gertner, who had a strong sense of justice, believed that the government must compensate the 4 victims and their families properly. The court ruled that the government must pay $110.7 million, setting the highest record of compensation for wrongful imprisonment. Although the Department of Justice protested and appealed, the judge remained steadfast in her beliefs because the judicial system should not be a tool for specific political purposes. Fighting against the government is a long and arduous journey, and Salvati knows that he may not live long enough to see the compensation, but he is glad that so many people are fighting for justice for the victims. For Salvati, every day of freedom after being released from prison is precious. He uses every minute to make up for the lost years. When his 9th grandchild was born, he participated in the whole birthing process. Despite being out of prison for many years, Salvati still feels very excited about being able to move around freely. Finally, he can walk hand in hand with his wife like a normal person. However, the 30-year ordeal in prison has caused irreversible damage. Salvati often paces back and forth in his room, and this compulsive behavior is likely to stay with him for the rest of his life. By now, you should feel both sorry and happy for Salvati. In fact, there are countless Salvatis in the world whose lives have been deprived for various bizarre reasons. And the justice system and the public are often accomplices. When we always hope to use the most extreme means to punish suspects for a quick and satisfying result, please think of Salvati's real-life story and consider what exactly we want. If you want to catch more kick-ass stories, don't forget to hit that subscribe button with the little bell icon. That way, you won't miss out on any of the good stuff. See you soon.